Hey, RetconRaider here, and welcome back to Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader. As today, we finally finish bridging the gaps. Or perhaps it was gabbing on the bridge. It was one of those. But that said, after reviewing the remaining banter we have with the various characters, the only really prominent stuff that we still need to do is chat up Argenta, who we've pretty much completely neglected, and then go meet our new astropath. So yeah, that's our primary goal today. To go ahead and check those two things off our to-do list. And then if we have time left over, there is apparently one last minor side quest we can pursue.
Greetings.
Even in stillness, Sister Argenta radiates energy. With her dark eyes shining and a slight blush to her cheeks, she is reciting a prayer, and looks at you only once she has spoken the final line. Sister Argenta. You know, now that we find ourselves between immediate crises, I'm just making the rounds on the bridge. So what can you tell me about yourself?
About me? I am the Emperor's daughter and his servant. What else is there to tell about me?
She looks surprised. Well, let's start with the basics. How'd you end up throwing in with Theodora?
I first came here when I found myself in need of passage from Footfall to a remote planet. But I imagine what interests you is not that first journey, but rather what brought me aboard prior to the pirate attack. That story is complicated. It just so happened that
She stops short, and her expression darkens visibly.
I made a mistake. In a moment of laxity, I was ambushed by the accursed followers of the archenemy. I was badly wounded. Lady Theodora came to my aid and brought me aboard her ship, while her crew attended to me in my weakened state. It all happened not too long ago. I'd barely recovered from my wounds when the pirates struck. Truly, the servants of evil know no rest. There is no place where we can be safe from their machinations.
I see. And the people who attacked you, I assume Theodora's men took care of them?
Sadly, they did not. Lady Theodora was in a hurry and chose not to stay on the planet. Her people took me to a ship while I was unconscious, and when I came to my senses, we were already flying away. How I pray to come face to face with those heretics once more, and it's bound to happen someday.
Unfortunate. And you say this was all somehow your fault?
It happens even to the best of us. My mistakes are my burden to bear. I'll find a way to atone for them.
Argenta's response is initially heated, but then she frowns and lowers her head. If you don't mind me asking, where exactly did this happen?
On one of the recently discovered planets in the Expanse. No one suspected that it had already been tainted by the filth of heresy. Had I known it beforehand, of course I would have been on my guard.
Okay, so you've clearly got some unfinished business. I'm more than happy to help you with that. Killing cultists has been a bit of a recurring theme as of late.
The path to that planet was lost. All the knowledge is gone, along with the previous navigator. It would take immense effort and resources to rediscover the route. The heir to the von Valanci's protectorate must have plenty of other issues to deal with right now. Perhaps later, when the skies above our heads have cleared.
Argenta's eyes glint, but she hesitates and shakes her head with a sigh. I mean, honestly, we don't really have all that much going on right now, but sure. Suit yourself. So tell me, what was it like traveling with my predecessor?
I hadn't been here that long. Just one journey from Footfall, and the other journey, the majority of which I spent in the confines of the medbay. I can't tell you much about the first voyage. I was more focused on prayers and ruminations than on the people around me, or the journey itself.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. I was actually operating under the assumption she was like part of Theodora's regular retinue.
During the last journey, Seneschal Viserion stood out for me. He came by several times to ask about my health. He's an honorable man and a loyal servant of the Imperium. I think he is as meticulous in his inspections of the logistics systems as he is in his inquiries about the health of the occasional sister of battle aboard the ship.
Yeah, Abby's pretty great.
But not all of Theodora's people have earned my trust. You know who I'm talking about. There is no place for Adira Tlas among the God Emperor's faithful. I'm surprised she wasn't in league with the pirates. And I'm equally surprised by how deep heresy and treason run in this place. I'm glad we all made it through that dark hour. May the day that follows be bright.
Argenta frowns and shakes her head. Right, okay, so she barely knows anyone on board. That really does kind of recolor a lot of her early interactions. Like, I was thinking she was a regular fixture on the ship, but in reality, she was only there for 2 trips. And both of them ended with her almost being killed by cultists. Thank you, Argenta. That's actually very interesting.
As you wish.
So tell me more about the Adepta Sororitas, the Sisters of Battle, right? Can't say I've ever encountered one before. And it would seem you're not exactly a common sight out in the Coronis.
Gladly. There are none more faithful to the God Emperor than my sisters. We fight against his enemies by the will of the Holy Ecclesiarchy. I beg your pardon, Rogue Trader. Here I am talking about what every lesser noble in the Imperium knows. So what exactly are you interested in hearing about?
Right, of course. And as a totally real noble who was not just spontaneously ordained by the untimely death of my cousin, ? I am also, of course, aware of all those things you just referred to. But let's pretend I'm not. Simply based on the name alone, I assume that the Sisters of Battle are a sisterhood that excels at battle?
It is. The Sisters of Battle are a fire lit by the God Emperor. They are the echo of his voice that travels through the dark expanses of the universe. We bring his wrath to heretics, mutants, and other enemies of humanity. We protect the faithful from the unholy and unhallowed. Sometimes with words, more often than not with a bolter.
Yeah, I have certainly noted your tendency to quickly turn towards violence to resolve every issue you encounter. Tell me, do you or your sisters ever perhaps make mistakes in that regard?
Even the novices of the Adepta Sororitas are drawn from among the most worthy. Those who have taken the vows and become a full-fledged sister are the best of the best, tested by trials of body and spirit. Yes, there have been cases when a sister stumbled or showed weakness, but do not expect to hear a story of depravity or downfall from me.
Well, hold on now, Argenta. You literally just told me that you almost died because of some grave personal mistake you had yet to atone for. But please, continue.
Each such occurrence is a great tragedy for us all. Light cannot bear the smallest speck of darkness within. And thus those who have trespassed or shown weakness of spirit are given a chance at redemption. They are called Sisters Repentia, and may the enemy tremble before her, for nothing can stop a sister of battle who yearns to be cleansed of faults and weakness.
Ah, I see. So is that perhaps your path? Are you Sister Argentia Repentia?
Wearing nothing but robes, no armor, eviscerator in hand, those sisters who have once faltered find repentance on the battlefield. Their lives are seldom long, but a death in the name of purgation is a better fate than to live with a shadow in one's soul.
Right, okay, so you're definitely not one of those then. Either that or those are some very unorthodox robes and or eviscerators. We haven't actually seen any sign of eviscerators yet. I do hope they're in the game. They're essentially glorified two-handed chain swords, common amongst the most zealous fanatics of the Imperium. So just out of curiosity, what order are you from?
Once I had completed my novitiate, I was sent to the Calixian branch of the Order of Our Martyred Lady, assigned to the Order's Pronatus. The Order's mission is vital and noble. The Sisters Pronatus protect great relics of the Imperium. We guard them, preserve them, escort them when they are brought onto the battlefield or presented for pilgrims to venerate.
Pronatus? Okay.
And we seek out the relics that have been lost. Neither a coven of heretics nor the most wicked death world can deter Sisters Pronatus when their goal is to return a piece of the great legacy of the Imperium into the hands of the faithful.
The Order Pronatus, that's not one of the militant orders, but you're clearly a trained warrior. Is that common among your kin?
Don't let the name deceive you. The Order's militant trains sisters to march onto the battlefield as an army. That does not make sisters who belong to the non-militant orders timid and helpless.
Okay, well, I mean, I clearly wasn't implying they were. I just was asking for clarification.
Both the solace-bringing Sisters Hospitaller and the enlightened Sisters Dialogus know how to greet enemies of humanity. Their dialogue with heretics is usually quite short, with the last word being a bolter discharge.
Right, of course, so you are very much not an outlier amongst your order. Gotcha.
And my order has all the more reason to be known for the martial prowess of its sisters. We are the keepers of the Imperium's relics. What would become of our blessed hero's legacy if the Sisters Pronatus could not protect it?
Argenta adds with somewhat arrogant haste. Wow. So violent and prideful. You're actually kind of what I was worried Heinrichs would end up being. Someone whose zeal clearly gets in the way of their common sense. But he turned out to be surprisingly flexible and reasonable when it comes to actual nuanced situations. Argenta, though. Argenta is basically just a ticking time bomb, waiting for an excuse to go off. Wait, you mentioned your order was based out of Calixia, so how'd you end up all the way out here?
The Order sent me to Footfall. My undertaking was to assist the local priesthood of Drusians in caring for a sacred reliquary that had been there since the time of Pastor Mr. Wayne, the station's founder.
Okay, sure, but that's a long way to go for a single artifact. Were there no other sisters already stationed out in the Expanse?
None that I'm aware of, but the Sisterhood's orders are many, and can operate independently of one another, sending their sisters wherever their presence is needed as deemed by the Ecclesiarchy. Perhaps somewhere in the Lord Inquisitor's retinue, may his path be blessed, my sisters perform their duty as we speak. I wish it were so. Even a single evening spent in joint prayer and training would bring me joy.
Right, of course. Well, I think that's all the questions I had for the moment, but thank you. Thank you for the answers.
Should any more arise, keeping them to yourself would be imprudent. It is a virtue to take an interest in holiness.
All right, Argenta, but I'm going to remember you said that. So, hold on. If you weren't tied to my predecessor, and whatever you were looking for is now lost to the whims of the warp, what exactly is keeping you around? Why are you still on my ship?
This ship was targeted by heretical pirates, which means that my presence here and the assistance I provide to you are my sacred duty. Sooner or later, I will likely have to return to Footfall to protect its reliquary. But for now, I wish to remain a part of the Rogue Trader's crew.
Cool. I mean, based on recent revelations, it is starting to become abundantly obvious that you're probably the person who killed my predecessor, but you know, here's hoping that, things don't go that way with us. You are a valuable asset. I hope that in time we can become friends, and perhaps you will even call this place home? Question mark?
Those are very courteous words, Rogue Trader. Thank you, both for your words and your hospitality.
She gives you another, somewhat puzzled look. That is a very appropriate response. Thank you. So, Argenta, we should probably talk about what happened back on Footfall.
Yes, I'm ready. I would ask only one thing of you, Rogue Trader. If I may, I would like to see the chamber of the Sacred Warrant and kneel before the relic touched by the Emperor himself. A difficult conversation lies ahead of us, and I wish to pray by the relic before I lay my soul bare.
I certainly don't see any harm in that. Though I do hope it does not render you entirely speechless. Argenta nods gratefully. Sadly, because we are moving off the bridge, I suspect that's the end of her voiced content. That does seem to be the trend. Argenta drops to her knees, her hands making the sign of the Aquila. Her eyes are locked on the sweeping signature on the warrant. A seemingly mundane thing, merely a flourish on a piece of paper. Unless one knows whose hand left that mark, and whose blood is on that paper. If thou seest a flaw in me, smite me. If thou knowest a fall of mine, burn me with flames of fury and righteousness. But if thou seest a light in me, grace me. If thou hearest this plea of mine, bless me with wrath of fury and of righteousness. Argenta's voice is sonorous, as if made for singing hymns and prayers. But right now she cannot seem to catch her breath, so overwhelmed with emotion is she. For I breathe by the will of thine, for I live by the law of thine. I carry thy word, O Emperor. I bring solace to servants of thine, and ruin to foes of thine. A fate of terror and righteousness. Upon finishing, she closes her eyes and remains silent for a long time, with her head raised high. Slowly, like the first licks of flame in a campfire, a smile blossoms on her lips. When Argenta finally opens her eyes, they are alight with uncanny resolution. Rogue Trader, we need to talk. Or rather, I need to tell you something. The truth. The truth about how I ended up on Theodora von Valancius' ship, and about the cultists we encountered on Footfall. Oh, is that so? Well, you certainly have my attention. Please understand, I couldn't trust you before. I'll tell you my story, and you'll see why. Argenta pauses. I'll start at the beginning. It's easier to piece everything together that way. Upon arriving in the Expanse and on Footfall, I found no purpose here, only torment. I wasn't needed, The reliquary I had been assigned to safeguard was already well protected by Reverend Hieronymus's mission, and no one was even trying to defile it. For all its lawlessness, Footfall respects the worship of the Emperor. That was when Lady Theodora, head of your dynasty, appeared. She became an agent of divine will, in a way. Argenta falters, searching for the words. It was from her that I learned about a planet recently discovered by her scouts, Salus Prime. For a rogue trader, the planet was of little interest, a feral world away from convenient warp routes. But for me, learning about its existence was a revelation. Salus Prime. Can't say I've heard of it. Is that one of mine? Yes. Now the planet is yours by right. But it's not as simple as that. The warp route leading to it was lost. I will explain in due time. May I continue? Yes, please. The description of Salus Prime was familiar to me. It seemed very similar to a world from an ancient legend. The legend of Saint Argenta and her ship. Her voice grows reverent. Argenta, the living saint. She is my patroness. The order named me after her. She died millennia ago, when heretics caused her ship to fall from the skies. But even those blasphemers could not touch Argenta's ashes or her holy relic, the One Star. For the fallen ship, which now served as the resting place for the saint's remains, would only allow the truly righteous to enter. All others would meet their death. Imagine what I felt when this flash of insight came upon me. The world where Saint Argenta's ship fell was merely a vague legend. No one knew its actual whereabouts. And suddenly, I, myself named after the saint, come across this information. I realized at that moment that it was a portent, that I must journey to the planet and find the ship. And so I asked Reverend Hieronymus to let me go for a time on a personal pilgrimage. I boarded Theodora's ship and demanded passage to the newly discovered planet, Salus Prime. Wait, but why approach Theodora about it? If you're already there with Hieronymus, surely he could have helped facilitate such an expedition. I mean, as a fellow member of the Exsellsior, he would certainly have a vested interest in helping to recover such a valuable artifact. I couldn't just come out and tell him. It was a portent revealed to me personally, can't you see? I told Reverend Hieronymus the honest truth, that I was going on a personal pilgrimage to embolden my spirit. It really was a pilgrimage. It was as if Saint Argenta herself had shown me the way, commanding me to undertake this trial. If I had found the ship and set foot on its decks, if I had laid my hand on her remains and the relic, it would have been a sign that I truly had been blessed with the saint's favor. Oh, that's tough. I mean, obviously what she did was self-serving out of pride and yearning for a personal purpose. Losing her chance to serve what she saw as her singular purpose, that of retrieving and protecting the relic on Footfall, clearly drove her to make this decision, which I imagine is what she sees as her personal mistake. So she acknowledges it was a mistake, but at the same time, it's also very much something that Valin himself might have done. I mean, though, for slightly different reasons, perhaps. In his particular case, he does have faith in the Emperor, just not in the Exsellsior. I think I understand. While your actions were slightly reckless, everyone needs a purpose to strive for. Argenta looks at you, somewhat surprised. I thought that I had been called, that finding the ship was my destiny, my place in the world? Perhaps there is something to that. Yeah, perhaps. So wait, did Theodora know about your hunt for this lost relic? Lady Theodora lent her assistance. It was her intention to visit the newly discovered world, and she took me with her. Didn't quite answer my question, but sure. And this one star, what exactly is it? Apologies, I got so carried away I forgot to explain. The one star is the relic kept by Saint Argenta. I belong to the Order Pronatus, and we attach particular significance to holy relics. The one star is one of the lost relics of the past, so mysterious that no one even knows what it is exactly. Argenta's hagiography at times calls it a banner, or a set of armor, or a blessed chain sword. One thing is certain, it is a beacon of righteousness, and it was lost with Argenta's death. So, then what happened? Defeat, Argenta says bitterly. The ship's augers failed to detect anything of note during orbital scanning. I was expecting this, though. According to the legend, the ship can conceal itself from the naked eye, and only a pilgrim guided by a pure heart can find it. What I didn't expect was an ambush waiting for us on the planet. I landed there with a small unit provided by Theodora. I knew Saint Argenta's hagiography by heart. I knew all the legends about her. I followed their obscure clues, the descriptions of mountains and rivers from millennia-old tales. And I was certain that I had found the way to the ship. And that's when we were attacked. The words we heard in the heretic's shrine on footfall. Something about ways, doors, please addressed to some lord, the edge of daybreak. Argenta is shaking with disgust. They were the same words as those spoken by the cultists who attacked us on Salus Prime. My whole unit perished. All those honest, brave people I had led to search for the relic. It was only by a miracle that I didn't perish along with them. I didn't connect these events at first. The cultists on Footfall, the cultists on Salus Prime, the cultists attacking the ship, then Conrad's betrayal. What if these are all links in the same chain? What if they've long since infiltrated the ranks of the Von Valancia's servants? What if I led those heretics to the sacred planet with my search? I mean, it feels like Conrad's plans were more focused on Theodora than whatever you were doing, but at the same time, I can definitely see how you might interpret things with you perpetually at the center. No need to blame yourself, Argenta. I feel like what happened would have happened regardless. I doubt it. No one except me was particularly interested in the planet. Conrad, on the other hand, he sympathized with me when I first came aboard. He helped arrange an audience with Theodora and supported me in my effort to visit the planet. I never told him plainly why I wanted to go there, but I imagine that vulture must have figured out that it was something important, something related to the holy faith of the Imperium, and what could delight a heretic more than defiling a relic? Oh, yeah, well, I mean, in that case, yes, it is definitely your fault. Can I change my answer? Well, look, we won't know for sure until we catch up with Conrad, right? Oh, yes. And I sincerely hope that we will meet him again. That serpent needs to answer a few questions before he is plunged into cleansing flame. Hey, no arguments here. So, how'd you survive the ambush? Argenta hangs her head. Theodora's people received the distress call, came to my rescue, and brought me aboard the ship. I barely remember what happened. When they arrived, I was already severely wounded, fighting back with whatever remained of my strength. I think I shouted that we had to go after them, but they didn't listen. They took me to the shuttle and pulled out. After that, it's all blackness. When I came to, we were already in the middle of a warp jump. Theodora had urgent matters to take care of, and she decided that she could clear out the planet at a later time. You know, this certainly does make me recontextualize the events surrounding our first meeting. Yes, Rogue Trader. Argento looks you in the eye. I saw with my own eyes how a member of your family showed his true colors as a servant of the archenemy. I had already suffered a humiliating defeat at the hands of cultists, and was afraid of another betrayal. I couldn't be forthright with you, and so I studied you, looking for seeds of corruption, or the light of righteousness. So dare I ask the verdict? I mean, I'm still alive, so... I found a man who stood shoulder to shoulder with me and helped eradicate the cultists on footfall. Argenta smiles, as if reminiscing about a pleasant evening spent in the company of friends, rather than a bloody battle. Although my opinion of you started to change even before then, back when you agreed to talk to the orphans at my request. A leader who's willing to honor those who laid down their lives for them and take care of their children is a leader who inspires trust. And the way you acted in that moment. Do you remember? There was a young man whose grief and confusion had driven him to insolence. You didn't turn a blind eye to his misdeed, but you chose the right words to show him the path to redemption. It was harsh but necessary, like the Emperor's truth, like bitter medicine that helps the sick. I learned much about you in that moment, Rogue Trader, and I want to believe that I wasn't mistaken in my judgment. Right, so really it was more about you being right than it was about me being wrong. So, just to clarify, the only people who still know where Salus Prime is are Conrad and his cultists? Yes, I rushed to Theodora the moment I could walk again, and I insisted on going back to Salus Prime to defend the relic from the heretics. But I was told that the warp had destroyed the old route to the planet, and that plotting a new one would take a great deal of time and effort. As if there could be anything more important than protecting the faith and hunting down servants of the archenemy. In any event, the route was lost, and all knowledge of it died in the attack on the ship, along with the old navigator. But now we have a new lead, the data we collected in the cultist shrine on Footfall. I don't care what that reprobate we executed said. There must be a way to track them down. Tell me, Rogue Trader, will you help me in this undertaking? Will you help me find this great relic and return it to the people of the Imperium? You know, I don't really want to encourage your personal hubris, but at the same time, searching for ancient ships and relics is kind of my thing, so... Argenta walks up and places her hand on your shoulder. So be it, Rogue Trader. As I stand here before the warrant, the embodiment of the Emperor's will marked by his own hand, I vow that I will not relent until the holy relic has been returned, and the heretics punished, and may the light be with us both on this path. Yeah, I'd say this has been very illuminating. Okay, so as I've said before, the biggest problem with the mystery of who killed Theodora is the very narrow pool of characters or potential suspects that we actually encountered in Act 1. Conrad was always too obvious. The Inquisitor was a long shot. He is mentioned but never makes a personal appearance. But the real wild card now, it turns out, wasn't Conrad. It wasn't the Inquisitor. It was actually Argenta. She was a newcomer who had just forced herself into the midst of several of several plots that were already in motion. Conrad and his Cult of the Final Dawn, Theodora and her whatever she was doing with the Tech Plague, plus, of course, Inquisitor Calcazar and whatever it is he's trying to accomplish with Heinrichs. I mean, don't get me wrong, it sounds like all these locomotives were on a collusion course regardless. Argenta's just the last-minute wrench that caused a premature derailment, which, to be fair, did inadvertently foil Conrad's plot. Though I am unclear on how exactly Conrad intended to steal the warrant. Like, physically he could have stolen it, but I don't get the impression that just possession of the warrant gives one the rights of a rogue trader. He was already removed from the right of succession, so... Perhaps the intent was to control the other potential heirs so he could essentially become rogue trader by proxy? I suppose we'll have to ask when next we meet. Which may perhaps be on Salus Prime. Ugh. They're staring at me with their burnt eyes like I'm a leper. I'm just passing through, all right? So you lot can calm down. Your presence has flooded the astropath's souls with myriad shades of horror. No, we should not tarry here. Oh, yes, and then the fact that we came in with a 6-man party. That's our big clue that we've got at least one more puzzle ahead. Not to mention, of course, we're also seeing a lot of potential interactive puzzle elements. I mean, not interactive at the moment, but I have to assume that's where all these various bits of scenery and clutter will come into play. The machine uses its many quills to commit the astropath's whispers to paper, then sorts the resulting raw mental images based on their meaning. Oh, right, yes, those are... Okay, so those are astropathic drones. Huh. That wasn't evident from the angle we saw them at when we first came in. The throne is furnished with a conductive charge supply and can be turned into an instrument of execution at any moment.
I always have a backup plan.
Yeah, sounds about right. The back of the throne is smeared with something dark, red, and old. Neat. Yeah, notice some of the thrones have red console screens, I imagine. That'll play into our pending puzzle. My first thought is we're looking at a classic lights out type of puzzle. The ones where you have to turn on or turn off all the lights. But each time you toggle one, it toggles all the ones adjacent to it as well. Though that's theoretically something you wouldn't need a full party for.
I always keep my options open.
Underneath the grill, you can see enormous outlines of formidable machines in a greenish haze. The last beacon cannot be saved from the 13th storm. The lapsed father's beloved son will open his yawning maw. Inappropriate. Oblivion is inevitable. After the boundless sunset comes the horrific sunrise, brought forth into a wailing world from the womb of... Well, alright then. Sometimes you've just got to take charge. Zach? An endless stream of symbols fills the paper tapes. A deceased navigator's organ repurposed for the choirmaster's needs. Here is where processed messages converge from all over the chapel. That's slightly meta. I like that they just straight up admit that that's the same organ asset from our original navigator's chambers, since he apparently channeled through music, whereas obviously Cassia uses painting as her medium, her focusing element. Choirmaster Zachary Weisz, a tall old man in a long green robe, stands motionless in front of a cogitator. The closer you approach, the clearer you can hear his continuous, unintelligible whisper. You're about to call his name when he falls silent sharply and turns toward you first. Lord Captain. A visit from the rogue trader is an honor for us. Like other astropaths at the chapel, the choirmaster's eyes are bandaged over with time-worn scrolls of sacred manuscripts. Nevertheless, you cannot shake the feeling that his otherworldly glowing gaze is studying you keenly. How can I be of use, your lordship? Sanctioning is a brutal procedure, one which robs every astropath of the gift of sight. But in return, they gain a new kind of vision that allows them to see what ordinary people cannot. Oh, just crossing that bridge as I come to it, and it turns out you're the last stop on our astropath. Obviously, we've met before, but if you don't mind, I could use a refresher. The wrinkled face and drooping corners of the mouth look focused yet courteous at the same time. My name is Zachary Weisz, your lordship. I am the choirmaster of the Astropathic Choir. I was posted to this ship soon after my soul-binding ritual on Holy Terra. You might say I have been serving House von Valancius all my life. Right, and of course you have my immense thanks for that. So tell me more about the choir. Of course, Lord Captain. Is there something specific you would like to know? I mean, nothing springs to mind, but I'm sure you can give me the general gist of anything that might be noteworthy. To us astropaths, this place is our cradle and our grave, Lord Captain. You are at the conflux of every secret missive, every order of prime importance, every scheme being plotted behind the scenes. You're at a place where each of your loyal astropaths is ready to lay down their life for crumbs of information, if that is your wish. We receive and send messages. For hours turning into days, we wander the dark depths of the immaterium, carrying our voice through the warp's eternal night, bringing it to our comrades in some remote refuge, accepting the voices, signals, and missives of others into our own abode. Those are most often meant for you, your lordship, and at times they are meant for no one. Right, and what is that instrument? Oh, that. Okay. I thought someone got very confused about that organ. It is a sacred compiler that helps us record, store, and, to an extent, unriddle messages. The astropaths first receive these messages in the form of muddled images, dictating what they see to the machine, which logs their every word. From the reels of the receivers on the ceiling, the machine-recorded words are routed through lines under the floor into transcribers and then the Thesaurus core. This core is the most important part of the mechanism, as it contains a vast catalog of various symbols and the methods of their interpretation. The compiler matches the images and the message against its data, and forwards the results to the central cogitator, and myself so that I can begin the ritual of decoding. I know of no other choir that possesses so wise a mechanism, and I praise the God Emperor for its existence. However, while the compiler hastens the extraction of intelligible meaning from perplexing imagery, an astropath must still open their mind to interpretation, which is no less perilous than the rites of receiving or sending an astropathic message. Wait, I mean, if we have an entire Thesaurus explicitly designed to interpret these messages for you, then why still imperil your minds? Why not leave it to the machine? Regrettably for us all, your lordship, astropathic messages are not ciphered dispatches, but rather psychic imprints containing information. Only an astropath can read the entirety of something created through the medium of the warp. Furthermore, as messages pass through the immaterium, they might become distorted by malevolent intent. It falls to your servants alone to shield their mind with faith and separate the true meaning from the influence of the ruinous powers. Okay, so you're telling me that ultimately every message we receive is filtered through the lens of an astropath's personal interpretation. That seems like some cause for concern. Wise's face twists into a bitter grimace. My duty is to shield you from the monstrous communications that filter through the warp. The screams of the Emperor's loyal servants, centuries dead by now. The nightmarish, maddening images of the Sea of Souls. The cursed symbols that cause astropaths to convulse in violent fits of frenzy. The messages from abominations in search of weak minds to devour. Concealing all of that from you is my duty. Yeah, fair enough. I guess I don't really envy you that. So how does one even become an astropath? We were all part of the Imperial Tithe once. Psychers delivered to Terra on the Black Ships. But only a few of the candidates had what it took to study astropathy. Fewer still successfully completed the grueling training to be eligible for soul binding. And almost none survived the initiation. Interesting. He throws his head back. We were given the privilege to behold the Emperor's light. A light flawless and searing. A pious smile visits his lips. That changes you. It wounds you irreparably. It takes your eyesight, but in exchange, you commune with greatness. His presence in our souls fortifies them as we stand against malicious powers. After the ritual, an astropath is assigned their position. At this or that adeptus, an astropathic relay, or a ship. More often than not, our first place of service is also our last. You make it sound like astropaths are a very rare and coveted resource, but what happens if we need replacements? The expression on his wrinkled face grows even more serious. It would be more on point to say when you need replacements. The Emperor's blessing protects us from the warp's various influences. However, there are horrors dwelling in the void, for which even this defense would be no obstacle. Especially if one spends as much time in their company as we do. There is only one way to procure astropaths, and that is through the Adeptus Administratum. Luck permitting, unattached astropaths from the sector will be posted to the ship. Ones who, for whatever reason, have lost their place of service. Failing that, the request would go to Terra, and we will have to wait a long time. That said, there are other options. Blasphemous, forbidden options. The choirmaster grimaces. Unsanctioned psychers, unprotected and broken souls who seldom live past their first few seances. But even those would do should the God Emperor put our souls through severe trials. And judging by how rabid the warp has been of late, by the number of dead astropaths, those trials will be upon us sooner than our prayers could reach Terra. I know a couple of places where we can get new astropaths. Adira grins maliciously. That's, of course, if you don't insist on them being all classy and proper like this fried-eyed bunch. Yes, thank you, Adira. Moving on. I am listening carefully, Lord Captain. So, Zach, how exactly did you come to serve my predecessor, Lady Theodora? I imagine your position would give you some unique insight as to who she really was. I served her for 2 decades and never knew another Lord Captain before your ascension. With her, I had been through... The choirmaster falls silent as though briefly transported in his mind to another place. A shadow of regret creeps onto his face. Many things. Lady Theodora had a good understanding of my significance within the overall mechanism of the ship's services. Poorly concealed irritation creeps into the expression of regret on his face. Which, however, did not stop her from neglecting my warnings. Wait, so you've only been here for like 20 years? But you said... Zach, if you don't mind me asking, just how old exactly are you? If my calculations are correct, having factored in our movements through the warp, then I turned 34 a month and a half ago. There is a pause. You can't quite decide if the old man in front of you is joking, but there is not the slightest hint of a smile on his face. Yikes. Okay, well... Hastily moving on. What's that sound I'm hearing? Does that not hurt your concentration? On the contrary, Lord Captain. It is a mental focusing technique used by your flagship's choir. One that I invented myself. This music was written by an astropath. What my charges and I hear in it is not what ordinary people hear. Its true depth and beauty cannot be fathomed without the Emperor's blessing. The music protects our minds from rudimentary thoughts, purifies and sharpens them. But above all else, it serves as a beacon of sorts amid the tumultuous sea of souls. A thread to lead us home from the deadly maze. I see. No offense. But obviously it also doesn't always work. I bore witness to one of your astropaths burning out on my way in. The choirmaster sighs and makes the sign of the Aquila. May the God Emperor rest his soul and protect him from the ruinous power's tenacious claws. That was the 5th one this month. Our younger voices cannot handle the warp storms raging in the expanse, and end up losing their minds. He adds, barely audibly. If they are lucky. Something is afoot on the other side of the maw, Lord Captain. Something infinitely sinister. Something disastrous. The scraps of mental images that reach us from the Imperium carry the mark of doom. The images emanating from there are like a beast, baring its teeth. You have heard accounts of disturbances in the warp affecting psychers, especially astropaths, who delve the most deeply into the immaterium. But there have been more and more alarming stories of late. Something is raging in the warp. Something that poses a particular threat. to those with psychic powers. I'm sorry, I didn't realize how difficult things must have been for you these past few months. I'll see to it that you and your department receive the finest food, recaf, and other simple luxuries that we have on offer. Anything I can do to help. I appreciate your concern. Perhaps these small indulgences will give us strength and save someone's life. Yeah, about that. So do you ever find your way out of the chapel and into other parts of the ship? Say, the confessional, for example? The choirmaster replies, slightly perplexed. I beg your lordship's pardon? I'm just saying, you do strike me as the type who might wonder why some are destined to perish in the warp while others must go on living in their stead. How odd. He grimaces as though with pain. Odd that you should have listened to my confession, and odd that you should choose to approach me afterward. Why? Let's just say it struck a chord. I've had some similar thoughts myself in the past, and I know it's not best to dwell on them. I was hoping there might be something I could do to help. Doubly so, now that I actually know the who and why. My confession made you anxious on my account, resulting in a waste of your time, for which I apologize. I am thankful for your consideration. He smiles a bittersweet smile. Death always keeps close to astropaths, and its punishments for arrogance and weakness are severe. I have seen my fellows die, and at times the memories are exceedingly hard to bear. Sadly, almost every choir has a story like that, and a survivor who has carried their ghosts with them ever since. Weisz lets out a ragged breath. My apologies, but I cannot continue worrying at these old wounds. Directing a choir requires a clear and firm state of mind. Yeah, I guess you can't really afford to be caught hemming and hawing when you should be focused on conducting the choir. I'll leave it be. Goodbye, your lordship. The choirmaster follows you with his otherworldly glowing gaze as you leave, then turns back to the cogitator. Very intriguing. And once again, something that really highlights the inherently bleak nature of the patchwork. The patchwork fabric that just barely holds the Imperium together. Okay, that's got to be our puzzle over there. We have one random named character, the only other named character in this entire chamber. Also, I guess our confessionals quest is already resolved now. I kind of figured we'd have to go back to Initiate Clotis, but I guess not. Though I'll check off screen just in case. That said, we are pushing the hour mark, so this does feel like a good place to call it. I was hoping to finish the whole Astropathic Chapel, but we'll have to save whatever's going on over here for next time. Again, I imagine it's just a fairly basic little puzzle. But then our bigger takeaway is definitely the whole thing with Argenta. It's not hard confirmed yet, but it really is seeming like she is essentially the figurative agent of chaos that ended up setting this whole series of current events into motion. Not intentionally, but simply by means of her personal hubris, her self-righteous quest to find her place in the universe. Anyway, ready or not, I guess we'll just put a pin in it for now and pick up here next time, as we once again return to the shadows of the void. I'm sure we've got no shortage of travel events all dogpiled up on top of each other, so I'm curious to see what comes next. See you then. Oh, and special thanks to the Raiders, the fine folks who help make these videos possible, including but not limited to V23, Revenant, Alois, Dragon Matrix 7, Drakiith, EgonAlter, Exsellsior, Gottlieb, James Trimmier, Kazorm, Mark Giemza, Nathan Welch Jr., OverlordPherom, RandomPassrby, RobbyB, Tomasz Piątkowski, Triphoppenskip, and Valinrook. Thanks for your support, guys. If you'd also like to help support the channel, then feel free to push the buttons that do the things. Trust me, it does make a difference. Or you could even check out the PayPal, the Patreon, the Nexus GG, or the YouTube memberships. Links are in the description.
Thank you. Those are very courteous words, Rogue Trader.